For these exercises, take a large sheet of your 18 by 24 cartridge paper and fold it into quarters. We'll begin with the first quarter. I have to tape mine down so that I don't run out of my camera viewing angle, but you can probably be best if you don't, and that way you can move your paper around and find the best angle from which to draw a line, because we're going to do this freehand without any ruler or set square or anything else. So the whole exercise is about that. The first thing we're going to do is put on an eye level. We want to put this high because we're going to be working on the ground mostly. So say a quarter of the way down from the top. I'm going to put a border on, and would you please put a border too? That way I need to do it so you can see where my paper is, obviously, but you should do it too. It's just get in the habit of doing that. It really does help in terms of presentation. And you can cross your corners since you're not taped down. Okay, so about a quarter of the way down, we're going to put our eye level. Okay, and you can reinforce it and make some corrections. And we're going to put our vanishing point in the center. That's our VP. We're going to use 1 point perspective and start to draw some equal-sided boxes. Extremely valuable skill is to be able to draw an equal-sided box. We're going to use our hands for measure, so I'm going to use my index finger for the width and my index finger for the height. And if you have very small hands, use your longest finger to do this. That way things won't get too small on you. Okay, so that's our equal-sided box. And as you know, we need our vanishing point to find the part that's further away and that appears smaller. And there is a little secret for getting this to look as if the depth is equal-sided too, and that's to make an X in the box. And that's how you find the center of both the sides. It works whether you're in perspective on this side or whether it's facing us squarely, like it does in a perspective, in a 1 point perspective. Now, the secret is to take less than half and turn it on the side. If you have a scrap of paper, you can take less than half. So that's half. That's less than half. And in this orientation, I know this, I've done this many times, so I know that if I take less than half the width, I have a good chance of getting this to look like a cube, an equal-sided box. Which is important because quite often what we need to do is, now I made this line straight because all verticals in perspective are straight unless you're using 3 point perspective, because they're the same distance from us throughout their whole length. They're not turning away. We don't need the vanishing point for them. And because I'm trying to mimic this box at a distance, and I'm using the vanishing point to tell me how much smaller to make it, I stay within my perspective lines, and I do exactly what I did here. I just drew a straight line. And I want this line now, so I just do the same thing I did to get that one. I just do a straight line. There's that one. Now, you always need to have all of the hidden lines as well to do all the types of things we need to do. So you need to use the vanishing point to draw them as well. So you take all 4 corners to your vanishing point. And remember, you can do phantom lines if you make a phantom line until you're ready to make the actual line. So now I have this line down below. And now, to make the line that will end this, where these two meet, will give me that. So it's all very logical, all works, and here now is my other line. Now I can do a very great deal with this, and that's going to give me an equal-sided box. One of the best tests of that is whether or not I could build a circle in it. So if we take our same measurement, we'll just come over here, take our same measurement, and that's my height. And we'll get the width now. Just tip of my finger, there. This is great in meetings when you have to work quickly and you want to be accurate until you get used to judging it by eye. And even then, it can still go off on you, so better to do a check. But in an equal-sided box, a circle will fit. And it has to be equal-sided, so you make your X. And you draw down the middle, vertically and horizontally. And if you divide these diagonals into 3 parts, it will give you the placement of the arc of the circle. And we know the circle touches in these 4 places. So all we have to do now is just round it out. And you're thinking round because it will become pointy and like a join the dot drawing, which is really what it is, if you're not careful. So you have to kind of keep roundness on your conscious mind. Okay, so there's our circle, and I shouldn't be tickling like that. Anytime you start to tickle, you stop it and be definite in your stroke so that we can perfect our speed, get our speed up. It takes a long time. That's why we use a pen and we don't stop and erase. Now, the test for my box to see if it's equal-sided is whether when I put that diagram in here, is it going to look like an ellipse in perspective, a circle in perspective, or is it going to look like an oval? And that we don't want an oval. So here I go again. I'm putting my X in. And you're trying not to press. You're trying to go very lightly with your pen. And you need to use your vanishing point down the center. And over here. And the same thing is going to happen. I have this place, and this place, and this place, and this place. And that I know is where the circle is going to touch. So those are my spots that I'm watching, just like these 2, these 4. Now, I have to divide each of these diagonals up into thirds, but you'll notice that they're all different sizes, but you try to separate all the lines out from all the others and try to see them, just as from here to here and here to here, I have to separate them out. And then you try, see how much space, this is the place that can trick you up. There's a lot of empty space here, and there's a lot of empty space here. So what you try not to do is to match the circle to the square. You want it to be round, so you've got to zoom past and around those things in order to make sense of this and get it to look round. And there's my other mark. Now, if I could, I'd be turning my paper. And so if you can do that, I can't, but you can do that. So do what you need to do. So there we have, it's giving me an ellipse in perspective. It's sitting down in space, it's not popping up. And I didn't get the dreaded oval. That's the worst part, when you get the dreaded oval, because it's not what you want. It's not this that you want. You know, a stretched out circle. You want one that will sit down in space. Now, you could go from there and you could make a cylinder, you could make a cone, you could do all sorts of things with it. But the real beauty of it lies in the ability to do this, to be able to find the next increment, so you could assign a measure to this. So we could say that this was 1 foot and this was 1 foot, because we know they're all equal. That's 1 foot. And if you go from this corner, or any of the, either of the front corners, through the middle and keep on going, where it gives you, where it touches this perspective line, will give you the next foot. So you can actually measure something. As roughly as we started, we could actually measure, and as well, this would give us, what, 1 foot wide and 2 feet deep. And we can be pretty sure, if we're trying to be accurate, if we're putting a window together and we know we have only that much space for something that we really want to get in that window, then we can judge whether or not this sketch that you're making is feasible. We can also light this. Now, normally your light source is going to be very much above, more than this, more than that, but that's all I can get on my paper. So put a dot for the light source and draw that down. The best lighting is side lighting, but I didn't leave enough from the side here, but we'll try, we'll see what this does. And I've got a dot now where the ray of the light, the center ray of the light source, is hitting the surface that this is sitting on. And all I have to do is project through that front corner in order to find the shape of the cast shadow. So it's going to cast a shadow out here. Now, what I have to do is go from that light source down through here and see where they meet. They meet there. So that makes sense. If this is all lit up, the box is interrupting this. I'm staying with the box, I'm not using the ellipse, but that box is interrupting the light that's hitting the surface. So it's going to interrupt it and be the absence of light now here. And this will tell me how long that's going to continue, and it only continues to there. Now this is the shadow for that line of the box. It's that, so this is the shadow for that. Now, to find the shadow for this, I have to do it the way that I drew that line, by using the vanishing point. So I have to draw that up. That's how I did it. That's how I made the line. So that now is the shadow for that line. Let's go through this corner. I'll go through that one. Oops. Getting too excited. Okay, so here we go. We've gone through that. Now, it's touching a perspective line, and look what happened when we touched a perspective line. We went the other way. So this is the shadow for this line. They're related. They belong together just the way those two did. But now there's an interruption. So that means that following this, the side of the box, this is the shadow for the side of the box. Now I have to do the back of the box, that hidden part. And how did I draw that? I drew it straight across. So that's how you draw that. You draw it straight across. And this one, if you go through this corner, it hits that back of the box here. So this shape, all back here, is the back of the box, and it stops here. Now if I do this on the other side, do I get any? Yes, it goes this way, but it's hidden by the box. I don't have any way of measuring this. If I do this, it just makes a line. See, because normally what I would do is bring this over, but I can't do that. So I use this instead, and I know that these two meet. This is the shadow for that. This is the shadow for that. So all I have to do is go through this and see where it meets the front projection. And that's it. That's my shadow. The part I'm going to see is here. And the box is here. And this will make sense if we had a box in front of us and we could light it exactly this way. You would see this would be what we would see. And when you have a cast shadow, you also have a form shadow adjacent to it. And this is our form shadow, and we're going to put our hatching on so we can see. Now, hatching is just skinny lines put side by side, close enough together that they make a value from light to dark. So, or just a solid value, not even thinking about light to dark. They just make a solid value. And you try to keep them as close together as you can, the darker you want it to be. And there's always shadow underneath as well. So this is an extremely valuable tool. Both of these things, knowing a cube and because it's a unit of measure. Now we know this is 2 feet by 1 feet. That's an important unit of measure. Let's take a look at what happens when we draw our geometric shapes in perspective and map out their shadows. So we'll just draw them freehand now that we know how to draw an equal-sided box in perspective. We'll just judge them. We'll sit. Remember, this is less than half the front, and we know that this has to appear smaller than the part that's closer to us, and so does this. That has to appear smaller too. And we know how the circle sits in the box, but a quick way to do an ellipse is just to put a horizontal line and put a curve at the back, and when you make the curve at the front, you give it a little more depth. That will make it sit down in space the way that our diagram did. And if you're making a cone, you draw the center up. You watch your symmetry, draw your center up, and bring the side over. And this side over. And when you draw a cylinder, you can overlap these a little bit to make it more interesting. You draw the same way, so shallower at the back and more full at the front, and rounded at the outer edges. So not that a circle has edges, but the outer parts, you round them out. And then you draw your cylinder up. And what you'll notice with ellipses is that as they get closer to your eye level, they become shallower. So this is closer to our eye level, the top part of our cylinder. So we're going to make this a little bit shallower all around than the bottom part. Now you see how this could become very handy when you're drawing anything. You just locate these geometric shapes within anything you're drawing, and you'll know how to make it look dimensional. That you always are looking to understand the hidden side. And we're missing the sphere. Now the sphere, the best hope you have of that is just to get a gesture going. So it's unlike our other shapes in that you're trying to get the correct diameter and height, but you're not. We could put it in a square, but for sketching, which is what we'll be mainly doing when we're in groups and we're pressed for time, you need to find an alternate method that's going to give you fairly good results. And a gesture is the best one I've found. And you just keep altering it until you get what you want. Now, in terms of our shadows, we saw that side lighting is best. It gives us distinct planes, even though in a window or on a store, in a store display, you're going to have thousands of light sources. You pick just one to give it some real power. You need to give side lighting the best chance. So we saw for the circle that it's really just another ellipse underneath it, so we can easily just throw that in. Remember, shallower at the back and fuller at the front. And the cylinder, it's a funny thing. It actually stops. You see that line? You make a shadow for that line, and then you make an ellipse to represent that ellipse. That's all you have to do. And the cone, we saw that made you just join the widest parts to a point on that line. Not that we're going to see it, but we should know where it is. And this one we found by just making a shadow for this side of the box and a shadow for the hidden back of the box, and drew it the same way. Now this is going to wrap. It's going to come up to this, my cone, and it's going to wrap around it. So it's going to go from here, and it's going to take the angle of the cone, and it's going to wrap around it. So it's going to look like that. If ever a shadow hits a wall, you'll see it. You'll see it all around you. It'll climb the wall. It just goes up and climbs the wall. So here we are. We've got, now, the side that's attached to the cast shadow is in shadow. It's the form shadow. So that's the form shadow for our box. And this is our cast shadow. The absence of light, the box is blocking it. And we're using verticals because they're the most common shape in our drawing. So they'll be there, but they won't overwhelm the drawing and become the most important thing, the way that diagonals often do. This is a different thing, though. This is a form shadow, and it's got to follow the form. So our cone is angled, so it's got to follow the angle of the cone. And our cylinder, its shadow is going to hit where this hits. Now we could have used one dot to give us all of these. That would have maybe made things more consistent, but when you're sketching and you're in a meeting and you've got to get this done quickly, you just want to anchor it to the ground. And the quickest way is just to get the shadow on. And it'll give more impact to what you're drawing. Now this, if the light is coming this way, our shadow for our sphere is going to be here. And often the best way to convey that this has roundness is to follow the shape of the form this way. And because it's going with the form, it won't call as much attention to itself as you might think. And the cast shadow, we can do that with vertical strokes. So, if you ever want to practice something that will be invaluable to you, this is the exercise to do it. You can do it anywhere, anytime. Just keep reminding yourself of these basic shapes and how the shadows are formed. And get great at drawing them. And And now there's a core dark. There are parts that are really dark, and that's where the shadow begins on the box. What happens is that there's light hitting this whole surface, and it bounces back up, so you get a bit of reflected light. This is easier to do if we use our pencil crayons. You can see it a little better. So the darkest part will be up here, and then as the shadow moves down and receives some light from the surface it's sitting on, you'll see that it becomes lighter. This part, light gathers at edges, so we don't want to render right over to the other side. We want to leave a little bit of a gap there so that we can see that light has gathered at that edge. And this makes things look very dimensional, just that one simple thing. This does most of all, though, making that darkest and then going lighter. Now the darkest part of this plane, it's in the light, but it's oblique to the light. But the darkest part of it is up here, because this corner is the closest thing to us, and this gives it some contrast. So this is moving from dark to light this way, this is moving from dark to light that way, but everything in this shadow should appear darker than anything in the light. And the top part, it's very light, mostly the white of the paper, but we can just put a little bit of value there at the front. Maybe this needs to come a little darker. But you always want to leave some of the white of the paper. Now, you've got a couple of... It's better if you can work with two colors to give you some more oomph in terms of value. So I've got two colors this time. If I'm making an orange cone, this is rolling this way, so I have a bit of a halftone. It's neither dark nor light, it's halftone. And then I can start with the halftone on the other side. My goal is to leave the light here, and I can work my way over here. And I want to put my core dark over here. Now I'm using the purple on purpose. I want to show you that even though the orange is a warm color, and this purple being closer to blue than the orange, it really still is going to work, because the value is what matters. It's not so much the color, but the value. And one thing that's very convincing is when you're trying to put something together that looks convincing and is very fast, is this idea of shadow down one side. It's fast and it works. So that's a good one to know. And for the cylinder, we've got two greens, so that will be helpful. So on the top, you just want to skim a little bit here of the light one. Then you work with the light one down this side. And that's halftone, and we're moving from halftone toward the light. And I can afford a little bit in here. That gives me a bit of reflected light, so the surface is bouncing light in here. It also bounces a lot of light here on the bottom, so it might be a good idea to emphasize that by going a little darker before. Now I can use the purple in here as well, to make this a little darker than the front, and that really helped to drop this in value, because in my package I only have one blue. I don't have a dark blue. I have another blue, but it's not darker, it's just warmer, cooler. This is warm because it leans toward the green, more toward the green than the other one does. So it's all relative, but temperature when you're using color is very important, very helpful to know all about that. And now I can put my shadow in, and again I make it darker inside the form, not the edge, but inside the form. That will help to turn it. And I'm being a little too subtle here, but I don't want you to feel like you have to fill the whole thing in. It's okay just to, and it's actually preferable not to. Now we're doing this exercise in pencil crayon in preparation for doing it with our markers. We're getting used to thinking about these ideas, and then now see, I use the purple with the green, and that still it works to drop the brightness. It dulls it down a bit, and that's all we need. Just the value is what really matters. Now I can pull more of this over, and best to sharpen your pencils so that you can use them on the side. That's the best way to use them when you're in a hurry and you want to get something down rather quickly. This doesn't look very smooth, but this cartridge paper is great for working with pencil crayon. It accepts the pencil crayon well. This time I'm going to start with the core dark. See how laying this on the side makes this easier to do. I'm going to start, and this really isn't even purple, it's red, but so I've got my yellow over here, and I'm trying to, this is rolling away, so I've got to have a bit of a halftone, and here I'm putting a little bit so that it's soft. But it's very important to get used to leaving the white of the paper. And this now is quite suddenly turning the purple more orangey, which is good, which is a good idea. And now I can put in some orange. This is making that positively red now. So everything in the shadow is darker than everything in the light, but you do have some reflected light in there. And I'm not burnishing. I know there's a tendency to want to, because you get the richest, most saturated color that way, but we don't have time for that. We have to move quickly and say what we have to say very fast, so that's good. And now the shadow, the cast shadows, they take on the color of the surface that they're sitting on. And when you do backgrounds, you don't do them everywhere. You just do them enough. Go around your subject and just do them enough. So you start giving them up fairly quickly. Because if you tried with your markers, which is what we're aiming toward, if you tried to do that, you would get into trouble trying to keep it even and not too frantic and all of the rest. So you just try to do it just enough. And even when you're doing this, you're thinking shape. What would be the best shape to end off with? And that will help when you work with your markers too. Now our shadow, of course, is going to be darker, but they get lighter as they move away from the form that casts them. So maybe we've got a this ends. And now we didn't put anything to darken our cast shadow, so we can put that in. Now this is a shadow on this form, so it should be orange. And what's really troubling now is the outline is so weak that they don't have any punch. We need to go in and give them some punch. And this would be best if you were to take your paper and move it around and get a good handle on this. So I'm gonna take the risk and untape this and see if I can't do a better job by moving my paper. And crossing your corners, I'm going to see if I can do without putting a line in the box, inside the box. I think that would be best if I don't do that. Now remember, this is concept sketching. This is the method you would use for that. So you want to be quick, and this of course is the tricky one, and I see I've gone way too far over on this side. So, and if you do enough of this, you get to know your tendencies and you'll be able to correct them. So this part, and that's the bad thing, is to go back and try to tickle. You don't tickle, you just leave them be. And we can put maybe a different color out the edge here. This doesn't have much color. Now the other thing, and you do this with your markers as well, is combining colors. So if you're not getting what you want from one color, this is important too, to be able to lay down a flat wash of pencil crayon. So it's good to practice, and you can give yourself a direction to go. I'm sort of hoping I can get rid of that, not make that so noticeable. So now I'm putting a little orange in here just to warm it up. Shadows are very warm, so you can go in and put some orange in your shadow. Sometimes it's a good idea to go around a form. And put a little bit of that to drop the background, take the contrast out of the background.